Hi, it's Paul Banis, GreatDad.com, and thank you very much for joining either the podcast or the YouTube version of the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you took just a second to subscribe either on your podcast app or in YouTube. It doesn't really do anything. It's not going to send you any emails. It's just going to show up more often on your feed, and it does me a lot of good in terms of getting more exposure for this work I do to support dads. I'd also like to invite you to come to my page, GreatDad.com/go, if you'd like to discuss more about any of the issues that we are covering within the podcast, especially if there's any way I can help you to be a sounding board in your own struggles to be a dad and to be there for your family. So take a look at that. It also includes a link to my course on gratitude, where at GreatDad.com/gratitude with a offer to take that course for free. So see you in a second. Hey, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com here again with my weekly series talking about modern fatherhood. And I'm excited to talk to Jack Hinman today about some mental health challenges that are facing our kids today. So welcome, Jack.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Paul. Like I said, any opportunity I have to talk about being a dad, about working and supporting young adults any day, I'm all over it. So I'm excited to kind of connect with you and talk with you today.
Great. And I should say you're Dr. Jack Hinman. You're a clinical psychologist. You've got some real expertise in this area, and we'll talk about some of the programs that you do. But I want to talk more in general in terms of the mental health crisis that's seems to be affecting our kids more. Let's start out with that. Do you think some of this is just hype, that where there's a heightened awareness in our time about mental health and a lot more uh, people willing to talk about stuff that wasn't discussed a generation or two generations ago? Or do you think it's really real?
It's both.
Yeah.
And the reality, like I really believe in how the pendulum swings in our culture and how
Mhm.
that impacts the like our just our process and a lot of things. And so I'm 51. I was raised in the 70s and the 80s and kind of got when I turned 18 when we kind of hit the 90s. And our parents, we were kind of raised in a space, Paul, that like you didn't really talk about mental health. You didn't really, I mean, wording like I don't think the term anxiety was never really utilized
Yeah.
until I
I remember
actually went to
you
grad
only heard about it in
school.
terms of suicide, right? Like it was only
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
suicide.
worst situation, but yeah.
Yeah, vets, like you heard about vets coming
Right.
back from like Vietnam
Yeah.
that had trauma or had anxiety, that kind of stuff. But yeah, and so then I think what happened is that our generation, as we are raising kids, I have an 8-year-old and I have a 16-year-old, that we're now overcompensating for that process of not talking about anxiety, not talking mental health. And so there's what's happening is a concept creep that's occurring, which means that I mean, it's great on one hand that we're talking about labeling anxiety, depression, trauma, addiction, but on the flip side of that is that we're labeling everything as anxiety. We're labeling everything as trauma, everything is addictive, and so that's happening. But there is definitely a notable increase in young people having anxiety. I'm seeing a lot more parents my age, like who are raising young adults that are anxious, and that's kind of like there's a parallel process. Parents are anxious, the kids are anxious, and there's a lot of pieces. So there's the concept creep. I mean, we can't not have a conversation around mental health without talking about the cell phone and how social media and that piece is definitely impacting child development. And so one of my favorite books that I really been like telling everybody to read is called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Hay. Phenomenal book. And he talks about where like anybody who's born 1996 on, their
Hmm.
brains are different, are
Yeah.
wired, the
Different.
great rewiring. So yeah, so yes, we're labeling everything as anxious and more people have anxiety. So two things are happening at the same time.
Yeah, I get that from my kids who are 21 and 25. They say that there's sometimes even a competition in their social groups. Like, you think your neurosis is bad. I've got one that's, I can top that. And I'm all for both my parents are psychologists. I'm all in on expressing our vulnerabilities and sharing and getting therapy when you need it and everything else. But that does kind of scare me a little bit because I don't know, as a clinician, you tell me whether there may be a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy if I realize that I've got an anxiety and now I'm almost self-fueling that anxiety. Is that real or is that a very naive statement?
Yeah, no, I think what happens is that when yeah, I think there's definitely an over preoccupation around the concept of anxiety and thinking about anxiety. And like now, when you're adding anxiety on top of your anxiety, and so
Now you're getting
you're kind of
anxious about
creating,
being anxious.
yeah, exactly, creating a snowball effect. But what also what's happening too is that what happens is that we cannot grow, we cannot we cannot even build like new neurons and new neural pathways unless you have anxiety. Like anxiety is a normal part of the process.
Mm,
And so where your brain cannot grow, you cannot grow unless you have that pressure. And so parents are stopping short and they're teaching their kids is like, hey, when you feel anxious, like they just want to put it out because
right. Yeah.
the parents are they have really poor regulation skills and they can't manage their kids' anxiety makes the parent make the parent anxious, and then the parent doesn't want the kid to be anxious. So the kid doesn't have the opportunity to work through that and develop some skills over time, develop resiliency and understanding the concept of anxiety. And so I'm like one of the things that sticks out to me the most is when I was in the pool with my son, and I think he was like maybe like 4 or 5 years old, and I was like, hey, jump, and I'll catch you in the pool. And he goes, no, I can't, I'm scared. And I said to him, hey, guy, you can be scared and jump at the same time.
Huh? Wow.
Like like
Wow.
we listen to our minds too much.
Uh,
Our minds lead us astray. There's the brain and there's the mind, and the mind will tell you things that will be crazy and like will lead you astray. And so the reality is that you can be anxious and you can do it. Like the key is holding those two things at the same time with people, especially your kids. Like, hey, I know that's pretty scary. It's probably really hard to go talk to your teacher, um, and and you can do it, like doing both with your kids. And so yeah, we stopped short. I think we overlabeled trauma, we overlabeled addiction, and then the reality is that means that we don't go through it.
wow. That's really good advice because I totally get you the fact that you when your kids are anxious. Yeah, I mean, when your kids are in pain or any kind of psychic pain, no matter what level it is at, most parents are just they just want to cure it or stop it or help it or solve it, and dads especially, I think we're more wired that way rather than just giving than providing the comfort and the help. We're kind of like we're very solutions oriented, and that may not be helping in all these situations.
Yeah, like my son is a freshman in college. We just moved him into the dorm, and he came home for
Congratulations.
the week. Like he came, yeah, it's so exciting. And he
Yeah.
came home for the weekend. And as soon as he walked in the door, he just broke down and was bawling and
Oh,
sobbing and like really upset. Just because it's so hard. Like it's hard. Like dealing with roommates, going to college, like being like not having friends, feeling loneliness, all those things. And luckily, he came in around like 11, like midnight, where I was like really tired and I didn't really have the energy to sit and process this with him. And I think it just what happened organically is that I just let him cry and we just let him be upset and let him feel that for a moment. And I said, hey, let's talk about like tomorrow. Let's talk of the next day. And so just being attuned, my wife and I being attuned to my son is that we wanted to create space, but like it was great just to let him be upset and be sad and all those things. But then when it was time for him to get back in his car and drive up to
right.
Salt Lake, go to school, he did. He'd even like bat an eye about it. And
Yeah.
so it's just that like I think a lot of times our kids just need a space just to feel what they're feeling. They're not wanting us to solve their problem. And also too, when you allow somebody to do that, allow a kid or you allow like a partner, just allow them to be in that space. We're teaching them that A, it's okay to feel what you're feeling, and you're gonna be okay. Like you're lonely and you're gonna be okay. Like
Yeah.
what happens is that when we try to pull them out of it and try to problem solve, we're teaching that person, that kid, that you can't handle it. You don't have the ability to
Right.
manage what you're feeling. And so like let them stay in it. They develop the confidence in what they're feeling. You think about it. Confidence is all about having experience in something. If you asked me to go fly a plane, I'd be like, I don't have zero
You'd be
confidence
anxious.
knowing how to fly a plane. But if you want me to like take my mountain bike and go down a black diamond, I feel pretty confident doing that. And
Yeah.
so it's just like we got to give them confidence and experience in that so they can build confidence and self-mastery around that. And that teaches also self-validation, like, hey, it's okay for me to feel that way.
I'm glad you talked about the about your son and the college experience because I really wanted to have you on to talk about this whole transition from childhood to adulthood and how I mean we'll talk a little bit later about some of your programs that you do, but about what the theories are, what attachment theory is, and how dads can help manage this process of disconnecting. 'Cause to your college experience, I remember going to college for the like it was like a week or two in. I sat down. I don't know if I cried, but I definitely had very, very deep, intense feelings about the fact that, hey, I'm alone in this planet. I've now left home and for the first time in my life, and it seems kind of stupid and naive now, but I was like, I'm not, there's not somebody else watching me. There's not somebody else responsible for me. I am in it by myself. And it was this scary, existential feeling that felt like, why did I ever realize this before? And I gotta work through that. I don't know how I did it, but I guess we all face that at some point in our life. Could you talk about what attachment theory is and why it is so important to this process then of detaching from the daily family?
Yeah, like yeah, attachment theory is kind of the space that I'm in when I kind of conceptualize like therapy, how I conceptualize relationships. And another way to think about attachment theory is our attachment style is our relationship operating system. So
Hmm.
think about your phone. Your phone has an operating system that operates all the apps and it kind of coordinates that stuff. Your attachment style is your attachment system, which is your relationship operating system, which means it's the stress that you feel in relationships and the way you respond to stress in relationships.
Hmm.
It's the way you conceptualize yourself. It's the way you build your self-esteem. And so our security in our relationships directly kind of correlates and builds in the way our identity forms and also how confident we're in ourselves. So there's four different attachment styles. And so the first one is secure. That's kind of what we're working towards is having a secure attachment. And then the next one is preoccupy, which some people call anxious attachment style. Preoccupied is like where I feel stress in a relationship when I feel disconnected, like when I feel the lack of connection. And then what happens is I lean into it. I lean into the relationship. And I'll give you a good example of this. Say, for example, who's got a person who's got preoccupied attachment style, will say they're texting their spouse or a partner and they don't get a response back in a certain time, it skyrockets their anxiety. And then they start blowing up their phone, like, what's going on? Did I piss you off? They start doubling down on leaning in. And it could be it could be overwhelming to that other person. So then
Yep.
you have also your kind of like avoidant attachment style, which is once they feel close, they back out. They kind of like once intimacy starts moving in a certain direction, the other person is getting more vulnerable, getting more closer to them, they actually retreat. They back out of the relationship. That's the avoidance style. Um, and they're like those folks are really good in like crisis situations and they yeah. And then you have the combination of both of them, which is disorganized. So they have preoccupied and avoidant together. So you have two poles. So you have like, so it's almost like I love you, I hate you. I love you, I hate
Yeah.
you. I don't know if
Approach
you
avoidance.
like
Yeah.
been in, yeah, where I get close to you, I want to, I pull back. Then when I get anxious, I pull back, it could be riding a roller coaster ride with people on that. but the core struggle with attachment is abandonment. And so fear of so you see pleasing behavior, you like overcompensating, all those things as well. And so as a parent, it's crucial you know your attachment style. And there's a great resource out there called the Attachment Project. You can get
Mm,
on there. You can actually take the attachment quiz and learn your attachment style because having that knowledge about yourself gives you like a guidebook to yourself.
yeah,
Okay, this is like it helps you learn. So and that plays out with parenting. So when you have an insecure parent, they're going to be making decisions through that attachment style. Like they might not hold boundaries. Maybe they're overly concerned about like being friends with their kid, and they're worried their kid's going to be upset with them, and all those things. So they don't like hold limits and boundaries and all those pieces. And so, and or and then so yeah. So knowing that will help you understand the stress you feel in a relationship raising your kid. And because then you can kind of like you can start understanding, okay, my style is preoccupied, so I have a tendency to do this. So I have to be aware of that. So being educated about your attachment style. And secure attachment, which means also the paradox of attachment. I love the paradox here. And that's what you're talking about is the detachment
right.
part. So the paradox of attachment is that so Paul, like the more secure you are, the more independent you want to be.
Yeah,
So
right,
the more secure you are with your spouse, the more independent you are with your spouse. The more
right.
secure you are with your kid, legitimate security, and your kid has secure attachment with you, it creates normal, healthy independence. I'm not threatened by their independence. So jealousy, all that stuff comes out of attachment. Like people who are jealous and who are and you can get extreme in this stalking and the murder suicide stuff you see in like domestic violence is all attachment. That insecurity of you see these men who get super insecure and they might be talk a divorce or the husband might get super paranoid and jealous and
Mhm.
that's based on attachment, lack of like having a healthy attachment. And so that's the abandonment piece playing out. But back to what I was saying, the paradox, Paul, is the more secure you are, the more independent you want to be.
Right. Right. So there is hopefully you have developed these secure kids who then, when the time comes to leave the house, maybe detaching is really the wrong word here, because that
Mhm.
makes it sound like there's a cutoff and there's a change in the
Mhm.
dynamic, but it's more of a continuation. If I'm hearing you right, in terms of they're secure, they're now secure as they evolve and they move on to living more independently. I don't think well, maybe you'll prove me wrong, but are there any like overarching concepts about developing this security in kids that maybe people don't think of right away, that are rules to help develop this kind of, secure individuals who can then make this
Yeah,
transition?
first of
It's a
all, it starts
big,
off
big,
as
big.
yeah, it starts off as a parent to be aware of what your attachment style is.
Okay, that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So awareness, like, okay, so, and also too, like preoccupied or anxious, insecure parents also like they trust their kids less. They're more controlling. And so knowing that about yourself, like for example, was say my son goes and gets his driver's license, he's driving to school for the first time, and my anxiety spikes. Okay, and then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna follow him in my car, or I'm gonna ride in the car with him, or he's gonna sit on my lap and I'm gonna drive with him. And you could take it pretty extreme,
Yeah.
but the key is like, what's driving that anxiety? I'm preoccupied, I'm insecure. So maybe, okay, so I gotta pull back. And the thing part about this is really starting to understand what secure attachment looks like. So what is the secure response? Because you could be preoccupied or disorganized or avoidant, but start learning to how to respond securely. Over long amounts of time, you can start shifting your attachment style. And this is a little bit more controversial and more of a newer idea that people thought that like, oh, you've got your attachment style and you're locked in your whole life, you
Right.
can't change it. but we're talking about deep work and good therapy. Like Alan Shore is a researcher from Stanford, and one of the best podcast conversations about therapy you ever find is Uberman and Alan Shore talking about what good therapy looks like. And then he's coming from an attachment perspective. And so the key is like acting secure when you've got insecure attachment. So that will shift your neurology over time. And also being in healthy, secure relationships. Like, so for me, I grew up like my journey is my attachment style has been preoccupied, Paul. And I came from a maybe not the best, like a little bit of like a bit of a chaotic family system.
Hmm.
And then I just got lucky and maybe not. I found two friends from high school are very secure people, had very healthy family systems. I
Hmm.
attached my little wagon to their attachment like train and they're like still like deep close friends of mine. And then I've been married for 27 years. I've been married to a secure woman and that's been healing. So the key is people who have insecure attachment have a tendency to get into like what you'll see is dynamic a lot. You'll see a preoccupied person get married to an avoidant person, and that's just like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, recipe for disaster. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, or they'd be married to a disorganized person and they just be traumatized, traumatized, traumatized. And so the key is seeking out healthy, secure, like and that's the healing is being in consistent relationships and then acting securely is the healing process.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the fact that we know so much more about the brain, that a lot of those things that we thought were immutable, now we're discovering there are possibilities of change, and some of that requires deep therapy, and other sometimes it's more behavior modification and other things that gently move the dial a little bit. But that change is possible because I think a lot of us of our generation were more like, well, I'm screwed up in this way. I'll always be screwed up in this way, and there is a possibility for change. In that whole process, I mean, as dads navigate, I mean, I think that one of the hardest times in the relationship is also is the period of adolescence where the kids are more actively pulling away, and there is this tendency to or this paradox too, where you're like you want to give them independence, but then you're also afraid of all the potential for danger, for self-harm, even for suicide. The worst, I think the worst nightmare for those of us who did allow our kids to be a little bit more independent would be to find out that the child was depressed all this time and then ends up taking their life or something because we weren't controlling enough. Does that how does that dynamic work out? I mean, as parents, we're expected to watch our kids or to surveil them to some degree, but not so much that we're controlling. Yet there's always a potential for disaster. I'd love to hear what your thoughts about that because I worry about that all the time, even with my kids now who are off to college. That is there something I'm missing? Is there something I didn't hear? Was there a clue there that and nothing bad has happened, but I'm still, as a dad, I'm worried that being not overly investigative or controlling might lead to disaster.
Yeah, when we think about this process, and you're kind of talking about attunement, Paul. Attunement is like being aware of
Mm,
like picking up on cues, being
yeah.
aware of what's going on, and knowing how to respond as a parent. Attunement, and then you need to be attuned, like have like be able like it's like having your spidey senses, like being like having your like knowing your spidey senses like in your home, hmm like something's off about my daughter. I'm gonna I'm gonna go do X, Y, and Z. And the thing is, a lot of times parents don't like are not listening to their gut instincts as parents. They're not and then they're aware of it, but they don't act because it's too hard work
Yeah,
or they're
yeah, it
too
is.
busy, that kind of
It,
stuff. And then
yeah,
the
or
other thing
it's
is a
it's
parent.
awkward. You're not being the cool parent. You're asking questions. It's not easy. I mean, I feel I feel sympathy for people who don't investigate.
Yeah, and it's developmental. Like the thing is, like it
Yeah,
has to
true.
be at the very
Age
beginning.
appropriate.
It's not like something that you all of a sudden turn on later. It's something that you just do that like developmentally. For example, when you like, I love the term like between 0 and 2, it's impossible to spoil a infant.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Like you
Thank you.
you lean into all their needs. They cry,
Right.
you lean into it.
Right.
And then you start adjusting that over time. And yeah, but the thing that right, like it's interesting, like one of the biggest shifts in mental health is kind of related to what you're talking about, Paul, was that we, like, for example, Mick Jagger left the building and Stranger Things are showing up. And so I'll explain what I mean by that, where it's not so much about sex, drugs, and rock and roll anymore. It's about Stranger Things, where kids are not getting out. They're actually, we're seeing a flip side where they don't want to be independent. So it's more of the issue now of like actually having fear or confidence being independent. And so like most teens are not pushing the envelope for being independent. It's the opposite issue we're seeing now.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's one of the most dramatic changes in mental health.
Yep.
And so we're seeing less, like kids are having less sex, they're drinking less, all those things. And those are some maybe good byproducts of this process. But the reality is that what's happening is that parents are overprotecting their kids from the external world and underprotecting their kids on the online world.
Wow.
You're more
Yeah.
likely to find a pedophile or get abused online than you are in your neighborhood. And
Yeah.
so there's this ongoing like unnecessary fear of kids getting hurt, getting kidnapped, and so then what happens? So kids are not going out scraping up their knees,
Yeah.
they're meeting people online. And so parents are out, like they're overprotective, like I said, in the external
Yeah.
world and underprotected in the online world. And the biggest issue that parents need to realize is that it's it's detrimental. Like we have different developmental windows. Like there's a time to read, a time to walk, that it's important you learn those things at those crucial developmental times. And there's also a new window we need to add there is that it's crucial that you don't get access to social media until you get through puberty.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's flipped on its side where we're protecting kids and kids are actually not wanting to get their driver's license
Yeah.
and so it's more of the opposite issue, pushing
Yeah,
independence.
I know Scott Galloway makes this point about his own kids. He says, "I'm not worried. We went from like my generation worrying that we'd all get in trouble all the time to now I worry that my kids aren't going to get into any trouble." And
Mhm.
there's some fine line there that where trouble doesn't, involve a drunk driving accident or something, but there is, that there is some like willingness to experience danger, whether that just means going up and talking to somebody, a stranger or something a little bit more complicated. But it is it is really a challenge, I think, for us as parents. I had a guest on maybe about a year ago who talked about introducing small challenges as they grow to kind of get kids used to the fact of doing more awkward things and making it more fun and not intimidating so that there's a ramping up because this whole uh, like you say, attunement to their age is so important.
Yeah, like
You,
riding a bike.
yeah,
There's so many young people that don't know how to ride a
ride a
bike.
bike. Yeah,
It blows your mind. So think about the concept of riding a bike, where like there's risk.
yeah,
We're gonna take they're gonna take the training wheels off, and I mean it's there's such a parallel to the concept of learning how to ride a bike,
right.
and you've got the parent running along, and then they have to let go, and then the kid's like doing all this, and they're gonna crash. They're gonna like it's
Yeah,
part of that. It's just part of like the process. And so it's interesting that no, like kids are not learning how to ride bikes. And I remember when I got my bike, man, it was like it was the next step in my
of
independence.
independence. Yeah,
I could
yeah,
go, I could go other parts of my neighborhood that I'd never
yeah.
been to before. I could go into the woods with my bike. And so it's interesting where these normal developmental milestones of independence is not happening. It was like everybody learned how to ride a bike. Like it was just everybody did, but that's not happening these days.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if it's easier to ride a bike on playing a video game than it is to do it in real life. And you know,
100%. And that's such an interesting thing to say that, Paul, is that people are having like an illusion of experience, an
Yeah.
illusion. Like
Yeah.
I think, and they're having an illusion of connection online, and an illusion of what connection looks like. And so they're very delusional about the reality of that. So of course, like there's so much like there's so much part of learning how to ride a bike, balance, and that you can't you like once again you can't learn how to ride a bike by playing a video game. And I love the idea. Once you know how to ride a bike, you never forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's so and so yeah, there's such a you say that, and that's happening is that a lot of young people get this like this disconnect between perceived capacity and real capacity. And so I think this distortion of online is that they think they're really like their capacity of independence is here because of like their interaction in the online world, and the real capacity of being independent is really low. And so their perception of what independence is really skewed. And there's a degree of this like lack of reality about that.
Oh, wow, that is just so frightening if you think about it for very long, is that you could get trapped in that illusion.
Mhm.
Um, and unless we move really quickly into that illusion world, like a Ready Player One existence where we're just all playing in a video world, real life isn't like that. I mean, you get shot, you die. You don't get to just restart. I do want to talk about your programs. You were so generous in saying you didn't want to make this into an ad, I'm sure that there are a lot of parents who they are in this situation where maybe we all could have done things a lot better as dads. I mean, I know I wish I could take a lot of it back and have a few do-overs myself, and I wasn't even playing a video game, it was real life. But when kids are in this transition period and they're not ready for it, and now they're 18 and you can't go back to when they were 7 and start doing things. What does that look like for an 18-year-old and parents of trying to change the script?
Yeah, like I'm in a space called young adult transition.
Hmm.
And and so the big part that like what these programs are working on, like mine, is independence, connection, and health.
Hmm.
And a lot of young people are having a lack of community and connection, and that's
Yep.
driving high rates of depression, anxiety. And then there's also they're kind of I don't like to use the word delay, but stuck developmentally when
Yeah.
it comes to independent skills on a combination of that. And so programs like mine, there is a space, there's even an association for like a space for this called YADA, Young Adult Transition Association. It's a group of like programs like mine. We have a conference in October in San Diego, and it's like 500 people show up to this conference on young adult transition. So it's
Hmm.
providing coaching, mentoring, therapeutics, oversight and support while the young adult is living their life. So these programs are based in communities or next to colleges or they're in towns. And so our young adults are working towards going to college, working towards getting jobs while they're getting life coaching, mentoring, psychiatric support, therapy, family therapy. We have a dietitian, we have an academic coordinator, we have a job placement specialist, we do neurofeedback. So we're providing this really large wraparound services while the young adult is living their life. When they come to a program like Engage, they're not putting their life on hold. They're actually moving more forward forward, and they're not working to get out of a program like Engage. They're actually using a program like Engage to launch them into college, launch them into like work in those things. And there's programs like this all over the country. And and we all get together. It's very collegial about helping young adults in this space. And so some families, yeah, go
Is
ahead.
it like is it a 12-week program, or is it like a summer camp, or is it explain to me how, because I we talked, this is not, we're not talking about rehab, we're not talking about addiction, we're this is more trying to make this transition, develop the, is it skills, or is it uh, developing the inner resources? How does it work?
Yeah. Yeah, where I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a second about short-term insurance grabs, like money grab programs. So
Yeah.
these short-term 30 to 90-day programs have like actually don't work for most people, don't have the best outcomes. And the reason why they exist, because insurance companies will pay for them at high exorbitant rates, and it's making these programs a lot of money. And I'm going to probably get backlash for this, and I'm okay because it's a revolving door. A lot of our young adults go through short-term programs and then they come to us. We're
Mhm.
long-term. We're a minimal of 6 months. And most programs like mine are a minimal of 6 months. It really takes about 9 months to a year for it to really work because by a time a client kind of like rise to us, this has been an ongoing pattern for a large portion of our life. And we're looking for long-lasting internal change. These short-term programs are just about stabilization. And the clients just sit in a room and wait to the next group to go to happen. And the thing is, this idea of like therapy, like we have a misconception of what therapy is, or what like the concept is what's therapeutic. Like like going on a bike ride is therapy, or or walking with your therapist to class is therapy. And this idea of like, oh, I'm just gonna like put people in a room and lock the door and have them there for 30 days and just go to rotating groups is going to make some changes. And what happens is that client has to be experiencing their patterns. They have to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
going through the process at the
Right.
same time. And so it takes time. We're looking for long-term change by the time clients come to us. And and insurance will pay for a part of it, but it is out of pocket. And so unfortunately, like a lot of our families out there can't afford something like this. So it is for a niche kind of group of people that can afford programs like ours.
But are the kids, for lack of a better word, sent away to the program where they is this the kind of thing that they're usually interested in doing because it is perceived as a growth opportunity? Because it's clearly not for kids who are like having a mental health crisis or breakdown. It's not that type of thing, right? It's more looking like how to improve your skills rather than how to get out of the hole.
And
Or
maybe that's where a short-term program kind of comes into play, where they go there, get evaluated, get stabilized, and get out of that acuity, that mental health
yeah.
crisis. Our clients are still struggling with notable anxiety and depression. Like,
Mm.
I mean, we're a heavy clinical program, but we're not a container. So our clients are not suicidal, but they're not moving forward because of their anxiety and depression. That's why we provide the high level of clinical care we provide. And so yeah, yeah, remind me your gosh, I got to backtrack again. Can you get me back on track, Paul, about your question?
Well, I guess I just curious as to why would kids sign up for it? I know having experienced
Oh
some
yeah, okay.
depression in my past, I know when you're feeling that way, if you're feeling stuck, most people don't want to feel stuck. They don't really want to lie on the couch forever. That is not a solution to them, but they don't know how to get out of it. And I think a lot of them would happily say, "Hey, if you've got something that seems to work and you're going to, teach me how to better handle my life and be a happier person," they'd be all for it. But I don't know how do adolescents look at it that way, or they're like, "Oh, mom and dad are sending me to a jail for 6 months to be a better person."
It's on a continuum
Yeah,
and degrees of willingness. And we have clients that the actual young adult found us and then go to the parents and say, "Hey, I
yeah,
need
yeah,
this."
yeah,
We've had parents that will hire a consultant and say, "Hey, like, hey, I need help with my 20-year-old. What do I do?" And that consultant will say, "Hey, I know exactly there's programs out there that can help your adult child here." And then parents might have to do some limits and
hmm,
maybe holding limits and boundaries and create a condition for their young adult child to be conducive to it. Because a lot of young adults, some of them don't want to do it because they're comfortable. They're living
yeah,
in their in their parents' basement, and then all their needs are provided. Their parents are enabling them. And so what happens is that parents who are in that space will work with a parent coach and do parent coaching and help create conditions for the young adult to be more open to this. Because if I got the internet provided and my parents are paying for my phone and I can play games all day and I'm doing DoorDash and I'm smoking weed in the basement and mom and dad are just like don't care, like why do I want to change? Everything's comfortable to me. Because like the thing is like people don't want to get outside their comfort zone. And so yeah. I would start off with parent coaches because sometimes parent coaching can help adjust some family dynamics in the home, and the young adult doesn't have to kind of go to a program like this. That's where I would start. And through coaching, then they might get to a point where the young adult was like, you know what, I really need to do this.
Yeah.
And so I'm working with families on average, probably 2 to 3, like 2 months plus before they even arrive here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. I'm glad that there are programs like this that are resources that are out there. I think it's important that people understand that exists. I think quite often we also get in this trap as parents that we compare our kids and where they are right now in terms of their search for a college or their search for their first job or whatever to the best story of the most successful kid in our entire social group or what we saw on social media that day. And there are a lot of kids who are making this transition at different times and who are maturing at different times too. So you may have one child who's like knows what they want to do at age 17 and pursues it all the way through college and goes on to become whatever, and the other one who doesn't discover that. I've got plenty of friends who've like who had 7, 8, 9 years of full anxiety of like, will my kid ever grow up? And then suddenly at 27, they're just like, I found my thing. I'm excited. I'm totally launched. And they probably like, that was a lot of worry, a lot of worry and concern for nothing. But I think we all want to do during that period, if it were like 10 years of waiting and hoping, we want to feel like we're active. I don't know if there's any words of wisdom there in terms of knowing knowing when to trust that your child will develop into their own versus saying, enough is enough. We gotta do something about it.
Yeah, gosh, there's a couple things happening is that the concept of emerging adulthood is there for a reason. It's 18 to 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a newer developmental stage to what we used to remember in like
Yeah.
Eric Erickson stuff. And then the thing is on top of that, so it's longer because there's social economics that are definitely impacting like about getting into those different spaces. But the thing is like, but are you as a parent creating an opportunity to want to grow? Are you creating an environment where like your kid doesn't want to like to move out in a sense and conditions in a sense and like my son like about we were talking getting ready like about a year ago talking about planning college looking at colleges and he goes like why do I want to move out like it's
Yeah.
wonderful here
Yeah.
like
And as a
I,
dad,
I
you're like, oh, I love that, but no.
yeah, yeah, it was just great. He's feeling secure, he's feeling
Yeah.
safe and secure, but then like there's got to be a little bit of some like some little growth edges that want to push him out to be independent. And and yeah, it's easier for it would be awesome if my son was here because he's like my biking buddy, man. We
Yeah.
snowboard
Yeah.
together, we mountain together, like we
Totally get it.
love music, live music, all those things, and it'd be awesome to have him there. And it would be a hell of a lot cheaper if he lived in my house and went to the local college here in town, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
be the right thing for him and
Yeah.
creating like conditions. So the parents is, are we creating from like day one ongoing, creating conditions where our kids want to make those gentle steps to independence over time?
Yeah.
And it's longer. It does take longer.
This is just really great. I could talk for at least another hour about this because it's endlessly interesting in terms of the whole parenting experience, especially when you have kids who've already now gone on to college and the things you think about that could have been done differently and where they are and how this all works. I think it's the hardest time in this 20 to 30 year period is that you don't have any more control. All your work largely has been done. All you can do is be supportive and provide resources where you can, and or find, more help for them if they need it. So people can find you at engagelifenow.com where there's like the full description of all the services, what you do in these programs and how the coaching and therapy works, right?
Yeah, it's the best place to kind of learn about Engage.
Yeah.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
connect with me too.
Okay. Well, Dr. Jack Hinman, thanks again for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I think this is a immensely valuable episode for those of us going through this.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Anytime I can talk attachment, I will talk about attachment.
Hey. Okay, Paul Bance with GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching services along with a bunch of other free resources at GreatDad.com/go. Okay, till next time, stay strong.